Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining today. I'm Mark Malloy of the Sussex Ornithological Society. I'm sure you're going to enjoy and also learn from this talk by Tim Fox about barn owl conservation in Sussex. I just want to say a little bit about questions. If you want to ask a question, just click on the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, type your question in, and then at the end of the talk, Maya Bambrick of the Sussex Ornithological Society Council, who's hosting the Q&A session, will pose your questions to Tim and he'll do his best to answer them. And he's also aided by Terry Hallahan, who leads the barn owl group in Sussex, and also Stuart Card, who works in the group, may also be with us. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to ask questions and have them answered. If by any chance we don't manage to answer all of them, we will post the other answers on the Sussex Ornithological Society website within a day or two. So your questions will be answered. Please be assured of that. All that remains for me is to introduce Tim. Tim has many interests. I know that one of them is DIY. You may be able to see that from his background screen when he starts talking. But he also presents on local radio, which I've been just talking to him about, which sounds absolutely fascinating. He's obviously a keen bird watcher, and professionally his area of work is high-end hi-fi, which sounds fascinating as well. But of course, one of his other areas of expertise is barn owls. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Tim to start his talk. Over to you, Tim.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Mark, and good evening, everybody. Please forgive me if I'm a little bit nervous. I don't think I've ever had an audience this big, even on the local radio station. So I've got to just start sharing my screen, I think. Now, if you're hoping for a talk about tawny owls this evening, I'm afraid you've turned up to the wrong seminar. We're going to be talking about the barn owl. Lovely birds. I've been involved with them for possibly less than a decade now. I think Stuart's been involved a little bit longer, and Terry much longer. I'm not going to give away his age though. Right, so we're going to break this down into two bits. First bit is for anybody of you that doesn't know much about barn owls. We'll talk about barn owl, the birds. For anybody that does know about barn owls, I apologise now. We've got to cater for a wide audience. The second part of the talk, we've broken down into what we as the group do and how we help the birds with our conservation efforts. So, barn owl, lovely white bird. Scientific name is Tyto alba. Tyto kind of being a little bit like Tuto for owl, and then alba being white, which gives some of its clues to some of its other names, including white owl. A Ginag ollet, I don't know where it's called that, a billywicks, and a screech owl. They put the screeching together and the white and graveyards, and they did sort of have a bit of a reputation for being ghosts around graveyards, and so there's a little bit of folklore around many ghost stories actually turn out to be barn owls flying around. Now they are a big word here, I'm afraid, for me, so I apologise if I mess it up. Crepuscular, which means they appear or they're active around about twilight, which is both in the morning and the evening. So a lot of people I know, I have seen a lot of them sort of hunting at dusk as I'm out walking home. Not so much in the evening, not so much in the morning. I've got other things to be doing, such as going to work in the morning rather than look out for barn owls. But they are very widespread around the world. Other than sort of the Sahara Desert, where you won't find much food for them, they are pretty much found on most continents. Not Antarctica though, a little bit cold down there, and not prey for them to eat either. And if you look on the right hand side, you see a couple of different variations in their plumage. The one at the top is the kind that you'll see around the UK. It's much lighter, and the one below is the type that I think you'll find mostly on the continent. I think there's a scientific name for that, which is guttata, Tyto alba guttata, I think it is. But it's a much more orangey bird. But ultimately, it's still a barn owl. and it shares all the barn owl habitat, all the barn owl habits. The oldest ringed bird that we know of is 15 years and 3 months and 21 days old, and that was a nesting female, ringed in 2006 in Oxfordshire. And it was caught again by a ringer still alive in 2016. Sorry, it's 2001 it was found in Oxfordshire. 2016 in Buckinghamshire. Travelled a grand total of 6 kilometres, and that's quite good age for the bird. Normally the typical age is around about 4 years, averaging out sort of youngsters and the elderly birds. And 6 kilometres is probably about right for a barn owl. They've got short wings. They don't tend to migrate that much. So a bird that's sort of raised in one box in the area is very likely to stay around the local area within sort of 10-15 kilometres after dispersing from its nest. So the UK annual cycle, February, March, the courtship. They'll be, getting friendly with each other. By this time, they should have found, or the male will have found a nesting area, be it in a barn, in a box, and they'll be getting cozy in there, doing whatever barn owls do to precipitate the April-May egg laying. And I think I saw an email from Barry Watson. Hello, good evening if you're listening, saying that there's already a barn owl on eggs, I think in Dorset. So that's pretty early, a little bit earlier than usual, but that might just be down to the weather at the moment. June or July is the time of year what I'm really interested in, because they're fledging, and just before fledging is a good time to go out and ring the birds, ready for all the population statistics for that year. And then September, November, the young will leave the area. The parents will have got fed up with them by then and say, off you go. And they'll start wandering around looking for their own nest sites, somewhere to hunt, somewhere to roost, ready for next year. Because next year they could actually be breeding. So an owl that we'll be ringing or monitoring this year in a barn owl box could very potentially be breeding in a nearby barn owl box barn somewhere the following year, which that's 10 to 11 months old, and very, very keen. They are very faithful. They're monogamous. Another big word I managed to pronounce. Yes, they are very faithful, and we'll often go across and find boxes where we've got the same pair in it year in, year out. And it's only on death of one of the birds they will actually seek out another mate, or another mate will travel in and they'll say, hey, I've got a nice bed here, and I'm on my own, please come and keep me company. So during the breeding cycle, so they've done what they need to do to produce eggs, the female will start popping eggs out, and during this time, like most birds, she'll shed some feathers on her underbody, and this is the brood patch. Blood vessels come to the surface, and the idea is that the blood is where all the heat in the body is, and nearer the surface it means that some of that heat can be transferred to the eggs, and that will then encourage the eggs to hatch. Now the eggs are laid every 48 hours or so. Clutch of 5, yeah, we often see more clutches, bigger clutches than that, but not necessarily all the eggs hatch, and then sometimes we'll see less eggs than that. Part of it depends upon what's happening in the wider area at that time. If there's some really bad weather, the birds might say, actually, I'm not going to lay that many eggs this year, and they'll lay less. So the birds, once the eggs are out, the female will start incubating them straight away. So at the same time as she's laying eggs, she's also incubating. And what this means, you get staggered staggered hatching of the birds, the young chicks. So if you look in the left-hand picture, you'll see very top right-hand corner of that picture, you'll see a very, very couple of young chicks there, a few days old. And then bottom left, you'll see quite a developed chick. You can see around the face, you've got a little bit of the facial disc beginning to appear on the feathers. So that is probably a good couple of weeks older than the other birds. Now, what this does mean, and I think there's some unfortunate footage on one of the Spring Watch videos series a few years back from, I think it was the Lost Gardens of Heligan. They had an owl box. If there's a period of bad weather and food is becoming scarce, in that left-hand picture, top right might become food for bottom left. I'm going to leave it there. Right. Now, nice picture. I don't know who took these photographs. I think it wasn't me. I haven't taken a photograph of owls in all these stages, but you see that they start off as an egg. When they emerge, they're featherless, and they need constant monitoring from the female. So she'll be in there brooding them, keeping them warm with her body weight, as a lot of birds do, until the bird gains its own feathers and it can self-regulate its own temperature. At that point, the female is sitting in the box, hearing all these chicks saying, "Feed me, feed me, feed me," 24/7. She decides to go and roost in another box somewhere and leave them to it. And that's an ideal time for us as part of the Sussex barn owl group to pop along and monitor the chicks. Now we have, I mean, ideally, if we could get to them between 30 days and 56 days, there's no adults in the nest. It's just the young in there. The young are likely to stay in the nest as well. They're not going to fly out as we approach the nest. So it's a good, nice 2 weeks, to 4 weeks even, sorry, for us to pop along and sort of do what we need to do to monitor the population. And then after that, the adults, once they're down to the sort of bottom of the picture there, 63 days, they're nicely fully feathered. They can fly out the nest, they can fly around. They'll always go back to the nest because the adults will be there with their food. But eventually the adults will say, "No, sorry, off you go. We want a bit of time to ourselves, thank you." And the youngsters will then go away and visit somewhere else. Okay, I hope I'm not rushing through this too quickly for you. I think I've got 45 minutes, so I might slow down a bit. Now, owls. When you've got owls in your hand, we need to put a gender on them. We need to sex them. And there are a few telltale things that allow us to, sometimes quickly, sometimes not so quickly, put the gender on the birds. So a male bird will generally be a much lighter colour, both underneath and also on the top on the top. So wings and tail feathers will be much lighter. Females will be much darker. Also, when you've got a bird in the hand, you probably notice you'll be able to see speckles on the flank and also underneath the wing at the top leading edge of the wing. And I think you can just about make them out on the left-hand picture. Some birds are more heavily speckled than others. Some birds are very lightly feathered, and it's, is this a male or is this a female? And you have to look at other things, such as turn the bird over and see whether the feathers are darker over the top. And also some of them will develop a nice buff around the collar. So the front of the bird, underneath the beak, you'll sometimes get lovely females there with a lovely buff colour, sort of pinky buff colour. I do like birds like that. They're very, very pretty. And I just, yeah, I'm very, very pleased to have the opportunity to see these birds close up because they are very pretty birds. Now, Terry put this presentation together for me. Thanks very much, Terry. And I learned something in this, and some more things actually. So on their eyes, in their heads, front of the heads, like us, the distance, a flat head at the front means you can measure distance better with flat eyes. So distance to prey for us as human beings, distance to whatever we're going to go over and catch. Although I think supermarkets, I think you get a little bit strange if you're running across to the supermarket aisle, the fish aisle. Same with owls, and any bird that's got eyes at the front, you can judge distance. But their eyes are developed in different ways. So they've actually got more rods, which means they're better sensitive to light. So during twilight, they've got better eyesight than your eye. And this is more lights than cones, so they actually see more in black and white than they do in colour. And I didn't know this, but owls can't move their eyeballs. So they might be able to move their head round almost 360 degrees, but not. And they can swivel their head on the axis so that their eyes can be above each other as you look at them vertically, but their eyeballs can't move apparently. Thank you, Terry. Now, we talked about facial feathers a little bit earlier. They do have this lovely facial disc, and the bottom right-hand picture there is perfect. It shows it. It's almost like a heart shape, sort of rounded at the bottom. But that heart shape is very key to their main hunting equipment, which is their ears. It helps focus sound in on their ears, and they have two ears. We have two ears. The right ear is higher and larger than the left ear, and they're able to pick up. They're really good. They've got really good hearing, and because the right ear is higher than the left ear, they can get better focus on a sound they're hearing in the grass. So if something's rustling around underneath them, they look down there, focus on the sound, and they'll be able to pinpoint that really well. Now, there was a program a few years ago. I don't know whether anybody saw it. It was called Superpowered Owls. I'll mention that again a little bit later, but it was 2015, and they did an experiment, and they had one of the regular presenters, or one of the regular guys. He keeps captive birds. I can't remember his name. Sorry, but he had a barn owl, and they thought, right, let's do an experiment. What they did, sorry if anybody saw the picture and program, and I'm just repeating what you saw, but they made a room that was completely black, so no light could get in there at all, and they had a piece of apparatus in the middle that made a little bit of a noise. And the idea was, would the owl be able to locate and hone in on that signal, whatever that little noise was, exactly in pitch black? So turned all the lights out, put the bird in the room, made the noise, and with infrared cameras, the bird went straight for the source of the noise to within a millimeter, sorry, within a centimeter of it. If that had been a small vole, a mouse or something, it would have been in the talons, it would have been dead. So that is how good the owl's hearing is. And it's more, I mean, it's more useful to the owl than an eye. Obviously, it needs eyes anyway, but yeah, uses its ears for that one. Another interesting adaptation is its silent flight. Now, if anybody's been lucky enough to have a bird in the hand, an adult bird, and have a look at the picture, you'll see the very top feather there, that's the 10th primary. It's got this lovely comb-like feature to it. So if you've got any feathers around your house, or if you can remember picking a feather up normally, a normal feather, it's got a straight edge. So whether it's a gull, a goose, a sparrow, anything like that, it's got just a straight edge down it. But the owls have got this comb, and that has the effect of breaking up the air so that it makes no noise as it flies through the air. And this is another thing. Again, if you go and have a look, go and search for superpowered owls after this seminar is finished. There's a clip on there of some birds in flight, and they've arranged it so there's a pigeon, a peregrine falcon, and a barn owl. And along the flight path, so it's about a 10-meter flight path that they're going to encourage the birds along, they've set up microphones. They set off the pigeon, flap, 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 flap. You know the noise that the pigeon makes when it takes off, and then they're quite loud as they're clapping their wings. So that was really loud, and they did a sonograph of the noise that the wing's making. They then did a peregrine, a little bit loud, but not quite as loud as the pigeon. Then they did the barn owl. It was completely silent. It's amazing. Just that little bit of comb on the edge of the feather just completely broke up the noise. There was no noise there, and it was absolutely amazing. So yeah, so that's superpowered owls. Go and have a look for that one. Well worth a look, I think, in my opinion, anyway. And it's BBC. I like the BBC. Also, it needs to grip its prey. So it's got talons, three toes forward and one back. And once that's got its talons into a vole or something, it uses pressure, the talons pierce the prey, and the prey doesn't survive much longer after that. And as a word of warning, if you ever take up ringing barn owls, they hurt. So be very careful with the talons. Also, watch out on the comb. You've got you can see on the right toe there, right talon there. You've got this developing here. That's helpful for preening. So as the birds get old, that develops more, and it's another thing we can use to help age a bird. If we're not sure how old it is, the more developed this is, the more serrated it is, gives us an idea that it's a much older bird, along with other features. I've got no idea what papillae is, Terry? Is that the feathers, or is that the little spots on the feet? Sorry. Maybe that can I? That's my Q&A for Terry, please, Maya. Okay. Also, when we're out doing the ringing, one thing I had noticed, and Terry's presentation slide actually shows it perfectly. They do have very long legs, I mean, if you see a sort of sparrow hopping around or a blackbird walking around, it's I mean, the legs are in fair size to its body, fair comparison to the body, but the barn owl's got really long legs, and that is because it likes hunting in grassland, typically where its prey is, and it needs to be able to get through the grass to whatever is there that's making the noise that it thinks is dinner. So there it has nice long legs, and nice long legs to claw you with as well when you're ringing them. But anyway, onto the food then. I apologise if anybody didn't know this. I'm afraid barn owls are carnivorous. I don't think there's any vegetarian or vegan owls out there. I'm afraid they are very much meat eaters. And if you like field voles, yeah, that is their favourite food. It's available in high abundance, particularly in this time of this, particularly in this part of the world. Shrews, wood mice. Then there's another 20% which we've got listed as pygmy shrews, bank voles, harvest mouse, brown birds, bats, amphibians. Birds, did I? No, I didn't put I found a starling feather in a nest a couple of years ago. I didn't know what it was. And then bizarrely that winter, the Winter Watch had a camera on a starling roost underneath the pier. Again, I don't know if anybody can remember seeing this. And they said, right, there's something's going to be coming and taking one of these starlings. And along turned this barn owl. So this is a seaside town under a pier, and it's thought, food. But other things we found, mole turn up every now and again. I found a lovely pellet with a load of beetle carapaces in it, along with some mouse. So I think the owl was resting up in a barn one winter in some poor weather and thought yum yum. And I think Barry, if he's listening, I think he found a pellet with a woodcock skull in it. Now just think about a woodcock and think how long that beak is. Yeah, that couldn't have been very good going down, but it came back out again, so hopefully the bird survived it. Now, one thing is nice, and we can actually tell what these birds are eating, is because they produce pellets. A pellet, it's fur and bone, so they can eat something whole. So it's typically a small vole will go down their gullet in one. And once it's in its stomach, its digestive juices will do what it needs to do, and it'll extract all the proteins and necessary stuff from the meat, leaving fur and leaving bone. Now, it can't pass through the digestive system. It's going to be quite painful, and probably cause lots of damage to the bird on the way through. So instead of going out the rear end, it comes out the front end. And hats off to whoever took the photograph of that bird in the top picture. They've caught the bird in the act. The pellet is very fresh out, and when they're fresh out, they're nice and gooey. Again, that's a nice sign when we're going out monitoring birds. If the box is unoccupied, we can tell whether there is bird using it. And it's just not in there at the time that we're monitoring it, because we'll find a nice, succulent, juicy, black barn owl pellet. Apparently it takes about 6 hours for the bird to digest a vole. I think it can take down more than one vole at a time, and it gets sort of crunched up, and there's sort of this mash of bones and stuff swilling around in the gut of the bird, and it will say, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable now, and it will shed sort of 10 or 20 grams as that pellet comes out its mouth. But yeah, so if you're ever lucky enough to find some pellets, or get given pellets, soak them in a bit of warm water for a while, and then the fur will come away, and you'll be able to have a look through the pellets and look through. There's not sure what it shows on this picture, but there's charts. I think the Barn Owl Trust do a lovely chart that will allow you to take bits of bone, particularly jaw bones, and skulls are very good for identifying what's been eaten, because the different rodents have different teeth patterns and also different color on some of the skulls. So that's all very useful. I've never had the time really, but there we go. Some people do, and also we do get asked every now and again. Some of the schools in the local area say, "Hey, we're doing a little bit of natural history. We're doing a little bit of biology, nature course," and they just love barn owl pellets. And there's a primary school, nursery school I go to in the local area. They love the pellets as well because the kids are fascinated by it. It's, yeah, sort of thing. You get your hands a bit mucky when you're a youngster. It's what we all do, isn't it? Now, when they're eating rodents, and unfortunately, rodents aren't good news for everybody, particularly if you're a farmer or if you're doing something where there's a lot of food around. For cattle, perhaps, for sheep, or some, you've got food somewhere for livestock. It can be very tempting for little rodents to pop along and say, "There's an easy meal for me." And one way of disposing of them is safely put out poisons. Now, they're called anticoagulants. I'm sure everybody's probably heard about warfarin. It's used on humans in small doses if you've got a blood problem. It'll help with thinning your blood, but you must be aware that if you cut yourself, you probably won't stop bleeding. So you're advised to take precautions against that. And that's exactly how the anticoagulant works on the rodents. They'll consume it, it'll get into their bloodstream. They'll be eating something or they'll be running around somewhere, they'll scratch themselves, or they'll be eating something that goes in and makes a small scratch or something in their stomach lining or their intestine or something. That then bleeds, and that rodent dies through blood loss. I'm not going to debate the pros and whether that's a good way of disposing of rodents. It's not what I'm here to talk about, but there's a danger that all the time that little rodent is running around and it's sort of alive and breathing, it could actually turn out to be prey for something else. Whether it could be, if used in a town, it could be something like a domestic cat. Out in the countryside, it could be any number of wild animals, including owls, tawny owls, barn owls. And what happens is that they consume the animal, the poison is transferred to their body. With enough of that poison in their body, remember that these owls are eating rodents, and they're not consuming, they're not able to digest these bones, skulls, and stuff. And when they're regurgitating these pellets, there might be a little bit of a tear happens in their digestive system. And as you can see from this picture, this owl unfortunately has suffered such an injury. It's got poison in it. It's got one of these anticoagulants, and unfortunately, it's bled out. So it's not nice. So just yeah, that's the first generation of anticoagulants. I'm not going to even try to pronounce whatever or chlorophat. Yeah, I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to try to pronounce any of these ones. I think Stuart, who's better at pronouncing these, he went through one this morning. Sorry, in this session to tell me what it was, and it's like I can't pronounce them. But the second generation ones are a lot more effective. Yeah, not the best word, but they do kill the rodents quicker. Unfortunately, it means that if that poison gets into the owls or any other animal, it will kill that animal quicker as well. So you don't need so much poison to kill the rodents, and you don't need so much poison to kill the owls, unfortunately. So as a plea out there, please use, if you must use it, please use rodenticides, poisons responsibly, and preferably not out in the countryside where whatever is going to be poisoned can escape out and potentially enter the food chain as part of one of our lovely owls. Right. Now another way that birds get bumped off, unfortunately, and this is probably the main way that I've actually found birds in, except outside of an owl box, is road traffic collisions. Some roads, they've got lovely wide field margins on them. They're not cut that well. They've got wildflowers in them. They've probably got a vole population in them, and owls popping along thinking, there might be something tasty in there, which is all nice. But unfortunately, if there's no hedge between that verge and the road, it's the road verge, that owl can sort of not be paying too much attention to the road because, let's face it, its focus is on the ground below it That's where its food's going to be. And crosses the road, doesn't look both ways, and kapow, it's taken out by whatever's passing. And also, they're a nice big, they've got, I said they don't have a particularly big wingspan. They do have a nice wingspan though, and they are quite light, and a lorry, even a car going past could buffet that bird, make it lose its balance, lose its flight, lose its lift, and then it will get dragged into the road and then unfortunately suffer as a fatality. And that is a horrible statistic: 3,000 to 5,000 barn owls killed by road traffic in a year. It's in a way, it's nice that there are that number of owls to be killed. I'd much rather 3,000 to 5,000 barn owls are actually still flying around, not dead, killed by our traffic. And there's things that can happen, such as high hedges along roadsides, unbroken hedges, so that birds don't have fly through it, and with the habitat the other side of the hedge good enough that the owl's got plenty of space to hunt in. I mean, the way I drive to work, I see some lovely fields, and the hedges are about 3 foot high. And this is next to the A27, and I think I've picked up about 5 dead barn owls over the last 10 years from the A27. And they're just the ones that I've spotted, and doesn't include buzzards and other blackbirds and stuff. Well, blackbirds will fly anyway, but yeah, it's a shame. Our roads and barn owls aren't a good mix, unfortunately. And then drowning. Oh, sorry, this is all depressing stuff. I apologise. Okay, so they're lovely birds. They're adapted for hunting out at night, and the silent flight we talked about. One thing barn owls aren't is waterproof. Now, if you want a waterproof bird, go and find a gull or a duck where they've got oily feathers. They can oil their feathers, but barn owls just don't have that. And I guess the same if you've got a little pond in your garden. Something goes in there and there's nothing to grasp on the side of that trough or pond or whatever you've got in your garden. Whatever's in there will paddle around for a bit, and then it'll eventually drown through exhaustion. And the same things happen with owls. But as you can see in the lower picture here, you can put troughs, you can put grids on top of the troughs, so that if anything is still drinking out of that trough, whether it's whatever, horses, cattle, or whatever out there, it can still press down lightly and get the drink of water that it needs. And also means that anything that gets in there by accident, so an owl drinking slips in the water, at least then it can pop out onto there, and provided it's not bitterly cold, it will dry out before it catches hypothermia and be able to fly off and carry on with its hunting. But yeah, it's inexperienced birds. The same a lot with the road fatalities. I do find that the majority of the birds that I found have actually been youngsters in their first year, but it can catch adults out as well, and particularly adult females. It's never nice finding an adult female, particularly in the breeding season. This happened with one of the nearby sites. I've been along to ring at one of the sites. We found a dead barn owl on the A27, which was fairly nearby, and unfortunately that brood fell, which wasn't nice. But anyway, so on to part 2, which is us, the Sussex Barn Owl Study Group, or SBOGS, for when I'm in one of my dyslexics moments, Sussex Barn Owl Group Study. I think it would have been Sussex Barn Owl Ringing and Study Group, but the BTO wouldn't allow us to have a name that long, and that would have been SBOGS, and just wouldn't sound right, would it? So that's us. We are 35 volunteers. Now, for anybody quickly, I know the numbers there don't add up. So 2 plus 16 plus 9 plus 6 plus 5 plus 1 plus 10 doesn't equal 35. That's because some of us are multi-talented. We need a Schedule 1 holder. Now, Schedule 1, you ask, what's Schedule 1? Well, that's Schedule 1 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act, 1981. And that's there's Schedule 1 in there, which is birds protected by special penalties. I'm sure you're all aware, all birds are covered by the Wildlife and Countryside Act. Yes, even gulls, pesky gulls, and they have protection specifically around a much bumped up protection around about nesting time, so that you can't destroy nest or stop a bird attempting to nest somewhere if it started to. As one of my neighbours, I pointed out to them a couple of years ago, when a pigeon was starting to nest in their conifer. But there's this schedule one. This is birds that are afforded special protection because they are so sensitive to disturbance, and also the populations aren't that good. And it's not only a penalty to destroy the nest, it's actually a penalty to disturb the nest. And disturbing that nest could actually be something as innocent as taking a photograph. Now, a photograph, remember that barn owls have got really good hearing. So you can be a very long way away from a barn owl, but they will hear that click on your SLR camera, and they'll look at it, and it might make them that nervous. It'll think this site isn't safe enough for me to nest. And depending on the stage that they're nesting in the cycle, they could actually desert that nest, and we lose a barn owl breeding site for that year. Those owls don't breed, and we lose 3 or 4, 5 owls from the population that we'd either had there. So Schedule 1 protects birds. So we, as the group, we actually need to be permitted under Schedule 1 to go and disturb these birds. And when we say disturb, we do it sensitively, so we don't sort of go in there all guns blazing and making a lot of hollow. We receive specific training to go in there and lightly monitor the birds. So we've got Schedule 1 holder. I think that's Terry at the moment. We've got Schedule 1 agents, which are people that report to Terry. So he rather than have sort of 18 people that we Schedule 1 a license, which would be a very big admin burden for the BTO, they farm out the Schedule 1 to a responsible person who then oversees agents and gives them guidance. And ultimately, he's responsible for our actions. So if we do anything wrong, not only are we in trouble, but Terry will be in trouble. I apologise now, Terry. I don't think I've done anything on this yet this year. But yeah, there's 16 agents, so we have to be an agent or a Schedule 1 holder to go and do the monitoring work that we need to do. Ecologists, well, who'd have thought that somebody interested in barn owls would also be interested in ecology, or is it the other way around? Ringers, so this is people trained under the BTO, this British Trust for Ornithology, by the way, if I didn't say earlier, BTO scheme to actually go out and apply metal bands to owls' legs. And I think if you look very, very closely at that bird, on its right leg or left leg as it's looking it's facing you, you'll see there's actually a ring on it, which is a G-size ring, quite a tough ring, but not the biggest rings that get applied anywhere. So that bird has been monitored somewhere by a BTO licensed ringer. We've got trainees who want to become ringers, because the more trained up ringers we have, the more people we can have independently in the group going out with helpers to monitor nests. So the more ringers, the more nest sites, the better idea of population we can get on the birds. And then we've got a trainer who can train us with our ringing. So even though I've done several hundred barn owls, I actually still learning. And thank you very much, Terry, for taking over my training. I was taught by Barry Watson, great guy. I love him to bits. But if anybody's been out with Barry, you'll remember his ladder. And if anybody else is listening who's been out on the ladder, it's good. It's a very nice long ladder. It's not the most, it sort of flexes a little bit every now and again. It's not unsafe. If it's unsafe, you wouldn't be up there, but it's been fun. And it doesn't just get used for going up ladders, it gets used for fording streams and stuff like that. So it's a very good ladder. And then also we have helpers. We are encouraged, in fact, I think we're forbidden from going out doing any ringing on our own. We have to have somebody with us, just for a safety perspective. We need to, if something happens to me and I'm out on my own, I can't get to my phone, what happens? So we generally go out in teams of 2 or more. We try not to get to too many, otherwise it does get a little bit, landowners sort of forecast turn up. What do you need 4 couples for? So we go out in 2s, 3s, 4s maybe. So person they're designated the ringer. It might be a trainee with him, and there's helpers. Helpers are brilliant. I carry around big bags. I carry around big ladders. They're all heavy. Who needs to worry when you've got a helper? They'll carry anything for me. Sorry, guys. No, it's all a team effort. And helpers, they can help with carrying stuff. They can help with blocking up boxes. They can help cleaning out the boxes. Under supervision, they can apply a ring, and they might want to sort of become a trainee and then eventually become a ringer. So I think there are worse things you could be helping with than helping out ringing or putting up boxes for barn owls. And the age of the group, I think we have people in their teens, and I mentioned Barry. Now, I'm not going to give Barry's age away because I don't actually know it. He's significantly older than me, not old enough to be my granddad, I don't think, just. But I think Barry's the oldest member of the group, so quite an age. I think, yeah, quite a big age difference between the two there, and we're a mixture of men and women. We've got, yeah, just a nice broad range, diverse range of age and group, age and gender, which I really like. Okay. So yeah, so this is broadly what we do, and the picture on the right-hand side there is of a youngster being monitored. So we get communicated, or we get contacted sometimes during sites, or sometimes by some landowners. We're going to be doing some developing. Could you possibly come around and do some surveys and make sure that we've got barn owls, and possibly sort of suggest what we could do if we've got some barn owls? We also keep our eyes out. I know I keep an eye on my local council to see if any planning applications are going in for sites that I think may or may not have barn owls, or that I know have got barn owls, and just sort of tentatively contact the council and say, what ecologists have you got on board, and sort of go down my list of don't trust them, do trust them list, and say, yeah, they'll come up with it. And then you can sort of look at the planning permission and just make sure that in the ecologist survey they have picked up that there are barn owls there. They're not just surveying barn owls, obviously. They'll be doing lots of other things, but always look out for the barn owl bit, and if it's missing, I do ask questions. Also, they'll be contacted by landowners who say, I've got this lovely field, it's got owls flying around in it, could you possibly put up an owl box for us so that we can encourage them to nest? So we will have a look to see what else is in the area. We do have a list somewhere, a confidential list of barn owl sites, and we'll know what's in the area. And sometimes we'll say, we've got an owl box right next door to you, probably not a good idea. But mostly we'll go out there and say, absolutely fantastic, we don't have boxes here, where would you like the box to go? And I mean, there's things we look for. I think we've got some photographs a little bit later on in the presentation, but I see a lot of things about rewilding at the moment, and I'm going to mention NEP. Hello, Penny, and anybody else, NEP, if they're listening. Fantastic habitat up there. Been some barn owl boxes up there for longer than I've been doing barn owls. They've got some lovely habitat. Needs to be sort of some grassy stuff, and I think we'll get on to the habitat, the best habitat in a minute. But if you've got a wild area and you've got voles in it, and you've got somewhere you can stick a nest box, we'll say yes, please. And once the barn owl box is up, there'll be a little bit of negotiation. There might need to be a little bit of money passed hands. If not, the SOS Sussex Ornithological Society have been very good to us. So thank you to Mark, Maya, and the crew on the committee who have given us some boxes recently and continue to fund boxes for us. It's very, very greatly appreciated. Thank you. But if the landowner is willing to pay for a box, it's better, please, because it saves SOS funds. But during that negotiation for money, there'll also be, would you like us to come and monitor the box once it's up, please? Just to see how the owls are getting on. And usually the landowner's eyes light up, because for them, it's an opportunity to see the young birds before they come out of the box. And we'll pop along, so we'll agree a time. We'll be sort of around sort of June, July, maybe August, depending on how the season's going. Make one visit, have a look in the box, and do the ringing and processing, which the bird to the right in the picture is being processed. It's having its P7 feather being measured, I think, there. And we've got a chart somewhere which we can measure that feather, or check the feather length against the chart, and that will tell us how many days that bird has been out of its egg, and give us an egg. So looking at the speckles on that, you see some speckles there, and sort of generally buffy colour. I'm going to say that's a girl. That's a lady owl, and it's fairly well developed. Been 3 or 4 weeks before she's flying out and about. But yeah, so we take things like wing measurement, weight, obviously stick the band on the leg. So if anybody's not familiar with the ringing process, the BTO, British Trust for Ornithology, they issue us, we buy from them rings. It's a little metal band. I think there's some really small bands that will go on things like a gold crest or a blue tit. You get some really big ones that will go on some of your waterfowl and some of your eagles as well. Really big rings. We kind of do a medium one, but it's got a unique number on it and also contact details. So if anybody finds a bird, hopefully alive, but more often, unfortunately, they're dead. If they look on the leg, they'll see this sort of cylindrical metal ring, and that ring will have this unique number. And I think it these days got www.bto.org on there, I think. If not, I think it's got still the British Museum.ac. It's got an address on there, a web address anyway, and you can log on to that and report that bird. And you'll get asked things like where you found it, the date, the condition of the bird, alive or unfortunately dead, and they'll ask also the circumstances if it's been found dead. It's the more information you can put on there, the better. So found in a water trough, probably about a week old, or found by the side of the road, very well decayed, so a lot older. And slightly shooting off complete at a tangent, if you do find something like a barn owl dead and it is very freshly dead, look out the Predatory Bird Monitoring Scheme, because they get in contact with them. They'll send you out a box within which you can return the bird to them, having kept it in the freezer in the interim period, and they will actually do that, take the bird, accept it, and they'll do a post-mortem on it. And that actually helps monitor, we were talking about poisons earlier, it actually helps monitor the prevalence of poisons in the habitat, in the environment. So anyway, completely get back onto track here. So we'll ring the young birds. If there's any adults in there that haven't been ringed as well, we'll pop a ring on them as well. And if there's a bird that's already got a ring on it, we'll take a note of that, submit that to the BTO. And that's a nice, it's always nice finding finding an adult bird with a ring on it, because we can then make a note of that ring, and for our records going forwards, we know we've got that ring in our area. But it's so nice doing this ringing, and then you get a ping, you get an email through to say, hey, somebody's found one of your birds alive in an owl box. And it is the best feeling ever to know your birds have survived. It's helping produce the next generation of owls. But yeah, so we put the rings on, and then we go home and we do some really exciting database stuff. Yeah, no, it's not that exciting. So barn owl population back in the 1930s, a gentleman called Blaker, Terry was telling me about him. He did, and I mean, it must have been fun doing this by post, but he did an amazing survey back in 1933 and established the baseline for the population of owls. Brilliant, we think. Until we notice sort of mid 1970s, the owl population is declining. And then Colin Scheuer, nice gentleman, surveyed in 1984, and the population's sort of really going down. A variety of things here. We've got poisoning. So the birds are dying themselves of poisoning, but also we've got things like the thinning of eggshells, which was, I think it was DDT and other poisons in the environment. So they suffered like other raptors did. The population's crashing. And then we're also losing nest sites. So typically, why do you think a barn owl is called a barn owl? The clues in the name, they were seen a lot. They were seen all around barns when livestock was in there, when food was in there. But our use of barns has changed a lot recently. There are still livestock farms out there to keep keep cattle in barns, but their food stores are a lot more secure. There's probably less rodents around there roaming around eating the food. And a lot of barns are being converted into houses, because I've got to say, I would love a Sussex barn as a house conversion. I just love them. But it means taking a habitat, a nice house away from an owl potentially. So, and also I think around about 1984 onwards, we're losing a lot of the elm trees to Dutch elms disease, which elms having cavities in them for the owls to nest in. And then more recently, down to just over 5,000, or sorry, just about 4,000, I think, in 1990. So it's leveling off, but there's the population can only go so low. There's this hardcore owl population out there saying we're not going to be extinct from the UK. And I mean, to put that into context, here is those figures with actual figures. So 4,000 in 1990. Now, there was no survey done in 2020, but there was an estimate done by some very educated people, I think one of whom might be on this call. They estimated to be about 5,000 pairs in 2020. So the bird has actually improved its conservation status. It was amber, which isn't brilliant. It's not as bad as red, but amber on the IOCN, or whatever that stands for, list. But they're now up to 5,000 pairs, which is good. And I mean, if anybody wants to guess what the figures in yellow mean, the 1%, the 8%, 20, 25, and 90, think about it. Okay, well, think about what I was saying about barns being converted and trees being lost. That is the percentage that we believe, or the best guess, of the population that is actually living in artificial nest boxes. So back in 1933, very few. The percentage went up, and then we sort of clued in, Hawke and Owl Trust onwards, started putting owl boxes up on trees, and in barns as well, put a few boxes in barns. But we believe that now 90% of the barn owl population resides in man-made boxes, which is nice. It possibly means the more boxes we put up, the more owls that will be there. But with boxes, they need a little bit of maintenance, and perhaps we need to address some more actually issues why we need to use boxes. Right, so here is a bird on boxes. If you have been wandering around a field, and this was actually my first encounter, was wandering around a field near Arlington. I saw this strange triangular thing on a box, and I think it was Hawke and Owl Trust on it at that time. It was quite a long time ago. I thought, oh, what's that? And then I asked a friend. He said, that's probably an owl box, and it was one of these triangular A-frame boxes, we call them, called A-frame because they've got an apex frame like a roof, and it kind of looks like an A. And on the right, you've got a sort of barn owl trust style box, a lot heavier, a little bit more difficult to install on a tree, if you ask me, purely from weight perspective. But with the advantage with the one on the right, you can actually mount a bit of wood on the tree in advance of putting the box up, and just lift the box up over on top of the bar, and it's in place, which is quite nice. The one on the left is you have to sort of bump it up there, bump it up a ladder, or use a hoist on it. You can also get brick houses. I've never encountered a brick house. Sorry, brick barn owl. Of course, I've encountered a brick house. Sorry, never a barn owl, or one that's been designed for birds. And the advantage with that, it's very, very hard wearing, long lasting. It's got tiles on it, and also you can make lots of different cavities in there. So at the top of this one, I think you've got a cavity for a barn owl. I think there's kestrel in there as well. And you can put things like bug hotels. You can make holes in the cement and the mortar, just so that you can get insects in there and attract other things in there. And probably you'll get bats in there as well. So very expensive, but you can do a lot with them. Recently, I've seen a couple of these eco boxes made from recycled plastic. Fantastic. I mean, I've encountered one, and you slide the side up to have a look in there. No owl in there, unfortunately, but if it's making use of recycled material and it's long lasting, why not? Then you've got A-frame next along, which is the one I'm probably more familiar with putting up. There's a lovely gentleman called Henry, local to me, who makes the boxes for us. He's very, very nice man, and he lives in an area where they have a nice owl population over in Arlington. So, and then on the right-hand side, you've got an inside box, slightly different box design. You don't need to have the weatherproofing on this one because it's inside, so you don't have a peaked roof for the water to fall off. But you've got a nice little bit of a space down below the box, and you notice on all of these you've got a hole at the very top of the box. And that is because, sorry, moving on to the next frame. There we go. Sorry, come back to that one in a minute. So yeah, so onto that hole. So in these boxes, hole at the top of the box. Same on the one in the barn and the one on the tree. And that's because when the chicks are wandering around in the box, they're not old enough to fly. They'll sort of want to hop up and go out and explore things. It's very possible, we know situations, and we've come across situations, unfortunately, where owls have popped out of the box. They've got onto the ledge, they've fallen off the ledge, and they're on the ground. And parents don't feed the birds once they're out the ground, out of the box. And also they can't fly up away from dangers such as a passing predator. Yum yum, said Mr. Fox. And so we try and get boxes. We try and use boxes where there's a big gap between the floor of the box and this hole up the top, because that means if the owl can actually reach that hole, they can fly up there. And that means once they're out on the ledge, if they fall off the box, they can probably fly back up to the ledge, out of harm's way, and carry on getting fed by mum and dad. And here is an example of, oops, moving on. He said moving on. So here is a box that's not very good. The hole is at the same level as the floor, so it might be good for a kestrel. They're quite happy with that size of box, that the chicks won't fall out of that if they can hurry. Only if they get threatened. And the box on the right hand side isn't that brilliant either. It's going to be quite difficult to get a ladder up to that box to have a look in it. Let alone open the hatch. I mean, it might be good for the owls to sort of pop out onto the onto one of the limbs, but I'm also looking at it thinking, is that box actually attached to the tree at the back at all, or is it just rested in the fork of a tree? In which case it could get blown out at any time. I mean, I've got to say, if it's a choice between putting a nest box up in a safe place and not monitoring it, or not putting up a nest box at all, I'd always put the nest box up. So maybe the one on the right hand side, if it's fixed to the back of the tree, would be okay, but we're all interested in monitoring the birds. So yeah, I wouldn't put the box up there. And now I've got, sorry, I'm sure if I can use the right size button, I'll get things going right. You can also mount boxes on a pole. There is some very, very, very good habitat out there. I'm just thinking about the Pevensey levels. You've got loads and loads of rough grassland. I think you also probably Pulborough Brooks. Lots of grassland where you're going to have lots of little rodents around. In some places, there is just not a suitable tree to put a box on. We need a particular type of tree. It needs to be fairly mature, needs to be quite strong, and slow growing. So if you put a box on it, the box will stay on there for a few years. Sometimes it's not possible, so it just means somebody's got to get a second-hand telegraph pole, dig a big hole, stick the pole in the ground, and then put a specific special designed box on top of it. And in both, I think in the right-hand box here, that's actually a multi-purpose box. So you've got two nest cavities for that one. You've got one at the top, which could be kestrel, could actually be jackdaw as well. And then the bottom cavity on that one could be for an owl. Whereas the one on the right-hand side, that's probably going to be an owl. But nice boxes, and if the pole is put in properly and it's got the right preservatives on it, that pole will last for ages. But I'm thinking the one on the right, that's going to be exposed to a lot of wind, a lot of rain, extremes of our temperature and weather. So that might not last as well as potentially a tree mounted box, which you can face away from the weather. I mean, I guess the best owl box of all is going to be in a barn away from the weather. So there we go. So just to go over again some of it. So mature tree, not in woodland. Owls, barn owls generally don't fly in woodland. Tawny owls, fantastic, not a problem. Sometimes they'll take up residence in one of these boxes if it's in a suitable location. But our barn owls, they'll be hunting, they'll be flying around field margins in fields, and they'll be flying around, and every now and again they might think, oh, I need to rest on that branch there, or just sit on that branch, roost, and maybe look below me to see if there's any food below, and say, actually look to its left, and there's a tree, there's a hole in the tree, and it's this barn owl box, and I say, actually I'll take up residence there. So it needs to be visible, so not too much foliage around there, above 3 meters, and if at all possible, point it away from prevailing wind. So in our part of the woods, that's away from the southwest. Barn owl habitat. Okay, this is not good barn owl habitat. It's a hedge, and the field is drilled almost up to the edge of the margin, and there's not very much grassland there. Compare that to this. I love this picture. I found it on the internet. Copyright, I'm sure I've infringed, but lovely trees. Potentially, if that tree had a couple of lower limbs hacked off of it, would be a good site for a barn owl box. You've got crops, so this is a productive field for a landowner out there, and you've got this lovely field margin, thick field margin, wide field margin, with long grass in it, and probably a nice underlayer of grass for the field poles to be running through. So we like that. I mean, the other thing, I mean, you got wildflowers in here, so you're doing good for pollinators. You've probably got a lot of insect predators in there as well. So they're sort of in this as an insect bank. They're going out to the crop and taking out some of the insects of eating the rapeseed out there. And it's a food bank for the owls as well. I love it. So also as part of the barn owl group, we need to go and monitor and maintain boxes. Hopefully nothing was nesting in that box, but yeah, boxes, they can be repaired. I think that one's probably replaced, but we are obliged. If we put a box up, we are committed to maintaining that box, monitoring it, and doing repairs as and when necessary. And just the statistics for 2021. 238 boxes visited. I think I probably did about 30 of those, maybe a few more, amongst 292 box visits. So visited the same box more than once. 102 of those boxes was occupied, not bad. Third, 58 of those were barn owl, 28 stocked up, 11 jackdaw, 3 kestrel, 1 tawny owl, 1 mandarin duck, and also a couple of them with those. You don't want to go in a box that's got one of those. Generally, as you're approaching a box, you'll see things flying in and out of them. If they're big, yellow and black, leave that box for the year. That's I think that's hornet comb. But even if it's wasps, don't go near the box. So actual ringing effort itself, we've got some pictures there of some of our helpers this year. We did 190 barn owls, of which 180 with the youngsters. We're primarily out there doing the nest site, so we expect to get most pullers, youngsters, 10 adults, 2 controls and retraps, so adult birds that we are ringed before, either there or at a different site. Average brood size 3.3, not bad. We have known years where it's been 4. We've also known years where there've been 2 or less, because it's been very poor year. Hello, Stu. Stuart, when he was a little bit healthier, when he was without COVID. We try not to check at egg stage. It's one of those. It's a really dangerous time of year to be checking nesting owls. You can frighten the birds off the clutch, and you just lose that brood for the year, and that's not good. No dead chicks recorded this year, which is nice. Yeah. For 2022, then, this is our aim. 43 barn owl box requirement. A lot of those going in the East Sussex area. I think Terry will correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a landowner who's contacted us with a very nice big amount of land where he wants some barn owl boxes. And we don't just do barn owls. We've got a wealth of knowledge amongst the group for the other owls. I've never done tawny owls. I've managed to encounter little owls once, and I'm a big fan of kestrels, but if it involves a nest box and it's anything like that, we're very interested to try and improve the populations of the box down there. We know, I know that little owls have suffered population problems recently, as have tawny owls. So anything we can do to help them there better. And there is one of our trainee ringers helping out ringing some chicks. Very interested in involving landowners. And also some of the authorities. I'm going to single out South Downs National Park here. They've got some very nice rangers out there, help us out with our ringing, monitoring, and they started off Project Bob a few years back, which is Project Barn Owl Box. I just love it. But they sort of help coordinate, but they sort of get us in touch with the landowners actually out on the downs and around the Weald in Sussex. And the rest of West Sussex. We just love interacting with landowners because we get to put up barn owl boxes, and landowners are so satisfied and happy when they see these owls growing in their boxes, and actually just witnessing, just seeing the barn owls out of the box before they get ringed. They're so nice and cute and fluffy. No, really. So there's a montage of photographs that Terry put together. So an owl being ringed and a couple of owls being ringed. What he didn't put was, it's not all glory. They poop. I've been unlucky on a couple of occasions to extract an owl and not had its rear end pointing in the right direction. It's not nice, and when it first happened, I put my clothes in the regular wash, which made the entire wash smell of owl poo. It wasn't good, so I've learned now to put owl pooped food in clothing in disinfectant, get rid of the smell before I put it in the general wash. And unfortunately, my dad last year, he was standing underneath the ladder. He didn't have a hat on, and an owl pooped. Yeah, it happened. So that's us. That's the Sussex owl group. That's I think that's Ian up a ladder. Just installed a box, but yeah, we can be out. Generally good weather. It has to be good weather when we're out ringing, and then in the winter months, sometimes in the summer, if there's a site somebody's contacted us and they don't have an owl box, we'll be out in good weather putting up boxes. Not too windy, please, for us. We'll get blown off ladders. Owls will get blown out of boxes, and yeah, rain not good for us, not good for owls. But yeah, I think looking at my notes. I would like to say a thank you, firstly to Anne Hillman. I'm not sure if Anne's listening, but I met her out doing a survey many years ago. She actually got me into barn owls, doing a survey down for the BTO Bird Atlas back in 2000 and something. And she got John Franklin along to ring at a barn owl box I'd actually heard the owls in. Duncan and Jenny McCutcheon, who put up a lot of owl boxes in the area, Arlington and sort of East Sussex. And I've taken on board a few of those. Barry, of course, Barry Watson, who trained me up to what I am, and now Terry has taken me over. And Chrissy, who yeah, had a blast. We're going out ringing with her in some of my early years. All the landowners, of course. The SOS, I must say again, Sussex Ornithological Society, thank you so much for funding some of the boxes for us. Terry and Stu for agreeing to help field some of the questions. And absolutely, thank you to all the landowners. If any of you are listening and watching this, thank you so much. You really make my summers, giving me the ability to pop out and just get out in the countryside. I'm a townie, and I just like the excuse to get out in the countryside and do conservation work. So thank you very much. I think back to Mark with Q&A, I think.
Thanks very much indeed. That was a fact-packed presentation with amazing slides. Thanks, Terry, for those, and very clearly presented. So thanks a lot, Tim. We have run over time, rather, I'm afraid, so we're not going to be able to deal with many of the questions, but I'm handing over to Maya now, and if Stuart, if he's still there, and Terry would like to come in, perhaps we could manage to deal with maybe 5 of the questions. So over to you, Maya.
Hello everyone, my name's Maya and I'm a council member for the Sussex Ornithological Society. So there's quite a few questions come through, so I'll just pick a few. So the first one is, do owls have territories, and if so, how large an area will they cover?
Terry?
Tim, you can cover that.
I can cover that one. They're not territorial per se. You don't see big territory fights between barn owls, but they do have an area that they will go out and hunt in. And it's possible that you'll get more than one pair of barn owls covering that same territory. They don't generally fight amongst each other for that sort of thing. There's usually enough food going around. I have seen fights with barn owls, but that generally involves kestrels trying to take over a barn owl box, or a jackdaw trying to take over a barn owl box. And in that situation, a barn owl will be very territorial. It wants its nest box, and it won't let that other species in there.
They have what we call a home range rather than a territory. And to generalise, within the breeding season, that can be as far as 4 kilometres, but it's normally a bit tighter than that. It all depends on prey availability, of course.
Next question, can the sex be determined by size or weight?
Ooh,
I missed the question, sorry.
I can answer this one.
go Stu.
Oh, well done, Stu.
Okay, so the wingspan on a male and a female tends to be roughly the same. The big difference will be weight, and obviously through the breeding season, a female can get anything up to 390 grams, where a male will sit around about 300 grams, give or take. Obviously, that fluctuates massively depending on the food source available and the overall condition of a bird, but certainly it can't be picked out on wing length.
Thank you. Next one, could you give advice on cleaning out boxes, how and when?
Oh, I think we could. I'm a little bit nervous about giving advice on this one, Terry.
Barn owls have a protracted breeding season. So what we would tend to do is assume, and most times we're correct, that we would clean out the box mid-November up until early January. Help with that, you know, barn owls can, I've had barn owls in the nest in January. So it's, you know, it's a little bit of a thumb in the air, but we've got to generalize. And when we tend to go out, it's going to be mid-November to early January. Would you say that's about the fact with yours in West Sussex, Stu?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think just to say, if you're unsure, get in touch with the group. If you need advice, and you sort of got a box that needs cleaning out or something, it's possible one of us might be in the area. We can pop along and be with you.
Sorry, Tim, I think that'd be a good idea as well, because you know, if by chance there is an adult in that box, there's a good chance that we might be able to capture the adult in the box for you. So equally, as we're clearing the boxes out, we'll be able to show you the adult owl that's in there, which is always a really nice treat.
And someone asked, would the recycled plastic boxes overheat?
Yes. This is a simple answer to that. One has to be jolly careful. One does have to be jolly careful. We used to put up plastic barrels at one time. Although we never had any casualties, we did find in the Hawk and Owl Trust that there was a tendency for the chicks to overheat. So we're traditionalists in the group. We like to use, you know, good quality marine ply in an A-frame for an external box. So yes, the eco boxes are great, but beware.
Just touching on that, Terry, as well. One of the things I've actually got an eco box I go to. One of the things I've found with the box as well, although where it's sited, it doesn't overheat. It's certainly the humidity levels get really high in there.
Yes,
because of obviously with the decaying matter that's in the bottom of the box. So certainly a humidity could be an issue as well.
I think we've got time for a couple more questions. Do they only eat live mammals?
yes is the answer to that. Sorry, Tim, unless you know different.
Well, I mean, like birds, frogs, and basically, if it moves and it's edible and it's small enough, because yeah, I mean, if the question's about live mammals, yes, they eat birds as well, if they can find them, and yeah, there can be other stuff. I mean, my experience, I mentioned the beetles. I think it's not usual that they go for beetles, but they're fairly large beetles, and I think there's a bit of a famine at the time of wild food. But yeah,
there are live prey species that there has been projects where there's been supplementary feeding. If anybody wants to talk to me about supplementary feeding, help with this call, I'm quite happy to take calls or emails.
And then Cyril's asked, we look after a large churchyard with lots of large trees and a wildlife area. We would love an owl box. Do you think it would be suitable? And who would I contact?
Yes, and us.
That's a good answer.
Mark Mallory here. We'll put a contact email on the website tomorrow.
brilliant. Thank you, Mark.
I think we've got time for another question. If you find a dead barn owl, should you report it? If so, to you or elsewhere?
Tim?
Have a look on the, if it's got a ring on the leg, then do the contact through that. There'll be a web address on there. I think there's also a ring.ac, I think is I think one of the web addresses you can use. It'll ask you some questions. I'm assuming you've got the internet, of course. Big assumption on my part. Pop in the website. It'll ask you some questions about data finding, where you found it, state of the bird, and that will then get through to us, and we'll find the information or the person that ringed it. If there is no ring on the bird, I think we'd be interested to know about it, because to us it's knowing that there is actually a bird in that place in the first place. We might not know that there are barn owls in that area, and it might actually encourage us to go out there and do some monitoring, do some survey, and sort of contact some landowners and say, hey, you've got owls in this area, could we put a box up, please?
And then what is lifespan in captivity?
I don't know.
I think it's 21 years in captivity. So like any captive bird, it's going to be 5 times longer than the normal wild birds, but I'm almost certain it's 21 years, Maya.
And then I think lastly, what is the benefit of silent flight due to the cones?
The cones are to do with the eyes. So the two are separate. So the silent flight means that it doesn't alert its prey. So the prey doesn't know it's there. So it can fly around silently. There's a vole floating or a vole scurrying around underneath. The vole won't know what's hit it literally. But if it's on the surface, then the owl can use its eyesight to sort of locate it as well. I think probably the eyes are better for sort of flying around and not hitting things in dusk. So it will be able to sort of avoid obstacles, and just use its ears for prey, eyes for navigation.
Right, I think we better call a halt there. That's been a terrific talk, and I know there are a lot of questions. Well, I think there are some questions that haven't been answered. So first of all, a big thanks again to Tim, Maya, Terry, and Stuart. We will put a contact email with the answers to any remaining questions on the website in the next few days if you want to email the group, or indeed if you want to offer help of any kind. And finally, it only remains for me, I think, to say, if you're not a member of the Sussex Ornithological Society, do consider joining. And we haven't got another virtual talk booked at the moment, but there will be some, I'm sure, in the autumn. So thanks very much indeed for joining, and you will see any remaining answers that haven't been answered now on the website very shortly, along with a recording of this talk. So once again, Tim, Maya, Terry, Stuart, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mark. May I just quickly say
thank you.
Thank you to Barry Watson. For those in the SOS that don't know, Barry is currently residing now in Devon. So he's not an active member in Sussex of the group, although he does input. That's perhaps not common knowledge throughout the group, but without Barry, this group would not exist. So thanks to Barry. I want to thank Stuart Card, who put together the first part of the presentation about barn owls per se, and a big thanks to Tim, who presented something that I put together, and that's not easy, is it? You can't present something that somebody else has put together. So Tim, well done. It's fabulous, and and thanks for everybody for tuning in.
Okay, thanks very much. Have a good evening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.